What if FNAF was real? It's a question we've been asking for ages. Since the release of the first game, we've wondered what it would be like to deal with a real Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. We've even made multiple videos about how a real Freddy Fazbear's could happen. However, those were tailored towards a more FNAF-themed pizzeria rather than the actual Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. So this begs the ultimate question, what if FNAF was real? Will it FNAF? That's what we're exploring today. Greetings gamers and welcome back to Top 10 Gaming. I'm Connor Monroe and I thought about this way too much if I'm being totally honest. Okay, let's do this. Well, first of all, let's get this out of the way instantly. If FNAF was real, it would be horrible. Just straight up. 5 kids would have gone missing on one of their locations and the company probably would have closed down. But let's assume that people would still end up going, whether it's because they didn't believe the lies or thought that the government made it up, or because it's their choice, or because they're a YouTuber who wants views. Why are you looking at me like that? Well, assuming that people still went to the restaurant because perhaps maybe they vanished around the area instead of inside the place, what would it be like to live in a real Five Nights at Freddy's? For a kid, it would be pretty awful, but you also wouldn't know it. The world would be dangerous and anyone could be William Afton's next victim, but you wouldn't know that there was a serial killer on the loose with murderous animatronics able to disguise themselves and hide in plain sight that are willing to kill at any moment. But I mean, like, to be fair, that's also like real life, minus the animatronics. For adults, if you have kids, you may be worried. I mean, any parent is always worried about their kids, but if there was a group of kids who went missing in your area, I'm sure that there would at least be a small amount of paranoia. And honestly, it would be reasonable. I mean, I grew up in a house where my father was always worried. So much so that my sister couldn't walk up to her friend's house up the street without him watching to make sure she was okay. And while that would probably be extreme for most parents, if there was a very real threat of kidnapping, I'm sure that there would be a lot of curfews. For the sake of this entire thing, we also have to assume that the police didn't investigate the interiors of the animatronics themselves, despite them smelling like death and leaking body fluids, including blood. Since that's something literally anyone with common sense would check when investigating the disappearance of children and then learning that animatronics are leaking blood and smelling like a dead body. But what of the technology that we see in these games? Would animatronics that can alter their appearance be realistic? No. Of course not. The spring-locked suits, the illusion discs, the twisted animatronics, and the like are all extremely improbable considering the actual technology of not only our time, but the 80s when this would have normally taken place. At least, if we have a rough idea of the timeline, which honestly at this point, we could be totally wrong about the timeline. The technology in the games is so highly advanced that we have absolutely no idea what else they could have access to. They could have smartphones in the 80s for crying out loud. And if they don't, then William should have capitalized on that rather than murdering countless innocent kids, because he could have literally been a billionaire. The highly advanced technology would have to be disregarded in terms of the abilities of William Afton, so while this seems like a fight that nobody could really win, realistically, it wouldn't be as bad as we think, at least in those terms, since even Chuck E. Cheese, the closest thing to Freddy Fazbear's in our world, obviously, still only has the most simple robotic abilities known to man, despite the popularity of Five Nights at Freddy's and their ability to capitalize on that trend by taking some of those concepts, like the advanced robotics, not the dead kids, and then converting them into real life, because like the concepts in the actual pizzeria, not having kids go missing, like I said, that's a bad idea. Although based on comments left on previous videos, especially about how a real-life Freddy's would happen, there have been plenty of people that are willing to die, or more likely to go to Chuck E. Cheese if it was more dangerous for some reason. Y'all are weird. But one final query. How would YouTubers handle it? Clearly, there are YouTubers in this world thanks to the mention of Matt Pat, or at the very least Game Theory in the Fazbear Frights books, so what of the others? Well, we would most likely not be talking about FNAF. Something that I'm sure a lot of you would enjoy, but also something that you wouldn't be aware of, which is a whole other can of worms that I won't be getting into today, because you wouldn't know about FNAF, because FNAF wouldn't be a thing. However, I'm sure that there would be plenty of true crime and conspiracy YouTubers heading to A or the same Freddy Fazbear's where the kids went missing in order to solve the case. Or really just talk about it and get nowhere with it. Sounds like someone I know. Since they don't have the clearance or the equipment to do an actual investigation, or on a potentially closed case. Shane Dawson would 100% have gone there for that same conspiracy theory video, and the psychic twins would definitely have showed up at some point and definitely sensed something, but not quite known what it was. Ooh. MatPat may have made a food theory video about it because he made a food theory video about Chuck E. Cheese, but the thing is, these YouTubers coming to investigate, would they be William's next targets? It's an interesting question because as far as we know, he's only killed one adult, and that was Henry. Every other victim has been a kid, so while they may be in more danger, there would clearly be a bigger issue in trying to deal with these YouTubers, especially if they get killed or die mysteriously shortly after visiting a Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria. It would probably start some form of curse rumor that would only get more people to go there to try to solve that case. But how would Freddy's have dealt with the pandemic? Would they have made enough to survive the years of quarantine? Or would they, like our Chuck E. Cheese, have to file for bankruptcy? Would they get to open their Pizzaplex? Or would some problematic tweets from William Afton rise and cause the restaurant to get cancelled for calling Chica a he? These are all good questions that we will never really have an answer for because, well, FNAF isn't real. And that's why people keep commenting that nothing in these videos is scary. No, it's not real. Can't actually hurt you. That's why it's not scary. Scary is subjective. Just relax. William Afton, the main antagonist of the FNAF series. The purple guy, the man behind the slaughter, the breaker of chains, the mother of dragons. But that's in his world, in the games and in the books. But how dangerous would William Afton be in our world? It's a question I've been asking myself for a while, like for 2 days, and this is something that I plan on answering in this video. Greetings gamers and welcome back to Top 10 Gaming. I'm Connor Monroe, and this is how dangerous would William Afton be? I wanted it to be how deadly would he be, but YouTube. Well, going by real world standards, it's difficult to say, since obviously this isn't the world of Five Nights at Freddy's, and I wasn't alive in the 80s when the original killings take place. However, if William did not have access to the technology that he does in the games, he would probably have done significantly less damage. Firstly, his children probably wouldn't have perished, since they both died due to animatronics that were way outside the norm. Since, you know, Baby literally scooped Elizabeth using a big claw that was hidden inside her and then kept her inside of a chamber, and Crying Child was killed when Fredbear crushed his skull, which would require an absurd amount of force which would be impossible to realistically find for an animatronic, especially in the 80s, since FNAF 4 does take place in 1983, meaning all three of his kids would be alive, potentially resulting in less of a death toll, since putting Crying Child back together ended up becoming a driving force behind why William continued to kill. Since while the missing children's incident wasn't until 1985 supposedly, Baby was designed to grab kids long before, since Elizabeth's room was empty in FNAF 4, indicating that she was already scooped by Baby, so he would have had to at least have the idea to kill before 1983. Cause you know. We still don't know why he started killing. As for how successful he would be if his kids weren't a driving force, that depends. One of the most well-known serial killers is Ted Bundy, who ended up admitting 230 killings over the course of 4 years. I'm sure we all know the story of how he used his looks and charisma to win over various victims and society, but I feel like we can kind of compare this to William. He is in essence doing the same thing, using that Bonnie suit to win over his victims and lure them to the back room when he would then take their life. He was also able to avoid the cops despite being arrested, like we learned from the newspaper clippings in FNAF 1, because he was arrested but released due to the bodies never being found, even though animatronics were leaking mucus and blood. So needless to say, while yes, he would be limited with technology, he would still be able to kill, but I guess in the old-fashioned way, which sounds absolutely horrible. However, what would the cops have done? I feel like they wouldn't have been as bad as the cops from the FNAF universe. Like, the cops in our world wouldn't have been as bad. But hey, I mean, I don't really know. Like, the suits ended up leaking mucus and blood, and it was definitely reported to the police. Again, as we see in the newspaper clippings from FNAF 1, the parents who called it in even akin to the animatronics to reanimated carcasses. Which, I mean, does make sense given that they were possessed, but even in our world, if someone called that in, I feel like there would be an investigation. And while the animatronics wouldn't have been possessed in our world, since I've said before, possession isn't real, but if there is an ongoing investigation or even a closed investigation where bodies were not located, and then there are things in the investigated establishment that are leaking blood, I think that calls for the case to be reopened, or at least someone to go check it out. Somehow though, they either didn't investigate or they did but didn't find a body inside the animatronic, which is highly unlikely because, there would still at least be bones, so I'm pretty sure that they just didn't investigate. However, I'd like to think that in our world they would have been investigated and found the bodies, thus resulting in William being arrested, convicted, and only the original 6 victims having died. Nobody else would have died, and William would have been arrested. At least, I think he would. Obviously, I can't predict the jury, and I can't predict how the verdict would have happened, since, Ted Bundy was also arrested, and he had a trial that managed to evade police for ages, so who knows at this point? There we have it, friends. How dangerous would William Afton be? Not as dangerous. Hopefully, since he wouldn't have access to the same technology that he would have in his universe, and hopefully our cops would have been more competent. I'm still mad about those. What other questions should I answer, be it FNAF related or gaming related in general? Be sure you let me know down in the comments. I'm definitely thinking maybe something along the lines of why the doors don't work properly. Okay, not really, but you have to admit, the doors make no sense. I don't care if you say, oh, it's electromagnets. No, that's not how they work. They require electricity to actually, magnetize things, so it would be the opposite. If they had power, the doors would be up. So, my point still stands. And then everyone's like, oh, it's for safety so you don't get locked in. That room would have a window. It would have a window out back, so you could escape if there was a fire. I'm pretty sure that's required by law, that there would have to be a window there. So, why don't the doors work? I don't know. Honestly, I can't answer that question because I would just rant the whole time and it would just be a 20-minute video of me ranting. But honestly, it feels like that's something that you guys enjoy because you're still here watching this part, at least I hope, at the very least. Before I go, however, I'm going to read out some comments from previous videos. Jaden Perkins says, the doors in FNAF were the best thing but also made no sense. Changed my mind. I'm not going to try and change your mind. The doors make absolutely no sense whatsoever, and it makes me genuinely upset. I just went on a whole rant about the goddamn doors, for God's sake. So I think it's safe to say that they make no sense at this point, and I fully support that viewpoint. Don't worry. I'm not gonna change your mind. They're not the best thing, but hey, we can have different favorite things. Just Fun says, my guy, he's got the frisbee. Trap on the phone. Move them cornflakes. Rice Krispies. Hold tight my girl Whitney. Fira said, in the Silver Eye series, Dave mentioned the spring locks cause the worst death because the parts basically crush the person's body and then they'll drown in their own blood. I find that very terrifying to think about. Yeah, that's absolutely horrifying. I didn't read the novels, so I couldn't pull specifics out to for that list to justify the points, but yeah, I feel like that sums up why the spring locks were #1. For sure. Jesus, that's messed up. Even with FNAF. James Legalt said, what about the Dormitibus Havoc animatronics? Havoc Puppet exists in both worlds, I think, and is able to create other animatronics. Havoc Puppet only exists in Dormitibus canon, and therefore isn't a piece of technology from FNAF, so it wasn't included on that list. The regular puppet is the only one in FNAF, well, and security puppet, that's a different story. But I still think that the Havoc animatronics are absolutely horrific. What ungodly being possessed your mind in order to create those abominations? What had to break in your brain to conceive such a horrific monstrosity, such as the Havoc animatronics? Honestly, though, they look incredible and they do their job, so, well done. They're terrifying, but I love it. As long as I don't actually have to, play the game, then I'm good. Sanctopup said, he's here, he's there, he's everywhere. Who you gonna call? Psychic friend Fredbear. I tagged MapHat in a community post meme about how he made over 200 FNAF videos, and he didn't respond, which only made the meme more true. Man, if I could work with him though, that would be absolutely insane. But I guess that's gonna have to wait for a while longer, unfortunately. Notice me, senpai. Thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed, be sure you hit like and subscribe for daily FNAF content, despite how much I would like to talk about something other than FNAF, and let me know down below what you'd like to see next. Thank you all so much for watching. I have been in Shower Main Connor Monroe, and I'll see you in another video.